G'day again, everyone. Dr. Bertie here from Relational Minds, progressing our mission to support parents to help their kids through their emotional development, especially if they've had some troubles with mental health difficulties. This week, we're in for a bit of a treat. I'm really proud to introduce my daughter, who we will call Jay, who volunteered to present and discuss some of her experiences and ideas about how teenagers might experience depression and anxiety, and we really hope that it will inspire and help parents to understand their kids a little bit more. So without further ado, I will introduce Jay, and I'm really grateful for her to be part of this interview. So thanks for your help today, Jay. So I was wondering if you could help our audience maybe share some ideas about, what are some things that parents would be useful for parents to know about adolescent depression or teenagers with depression or anxiety?
Well, first of all, that depression can't be seen typically in facial expressions. It's not just stereotypical, sad all the time, grey cloud over their head, but it's just a state of mind, and then they can just stop doing the things that they enjoy and just start distancing themselves and stuff. But it's not always visual.
So it's quite subtle.
Yeah, you wouldn't always know.
Yeah. How would a parent know? What are some things that a parent would notice and make them think, oh, mate, what if my child's depressed?
Maybe just not being excited for things that they would usually be excited for. As your parent, you would know what your kid likes and likes to do and everything. If they stop doing that, usually sleeping a lot, and just lack of motivation to do anything, really. They're the usual signs.
Yeah. Okay. So are you saying that, a teenager with depression won't always look really sad all the time?
No.
And like a typical way of understanding depression?
Yeah. Because sometimes depressed people can put on a face, pretend that they're happy. They can still be smiling and stuff. They can still have times where they're laughing or whatever, but deep inside they're sad or hurting, or something deeper is going on, but you can't see it from the surface.
Yeah, and what about anxiety? What does that feel like, and how would that affect things like your sleeping, or maybe you can comment on this, is that, parents often talk about their kids are always up at night. What do you think is going on for that teenager?
Well, parents usually think phones keep kids up at night.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes the case, but it's also anxiety. Having a lot of anxiety in general about specific things just makes you think a lot and worry a lot. And when you're thinking, bedtimes when you're in bed, you're supposed to sleep, settle down, your brain will get tired. But if your brain's still active and you're thinking about all this stuff, it just makes it really hard to sleep and just block it all out. So that's why they'd lose sleep sometimes, because they're anxious and keep thinking about some things. Yeah,
and how would a teenager manage that, do you think? What would the parents notice that maybe they're really anxious and they can't sleep, and what would they be doing?
Well, they can go try and distract themselves, read a book, go on their phone. Yeah.
So saying the phone is actually, most teenagers would use the phone as a coping thing, and
because the phone can sometimes be a distraction from your thoughts.
Yeah.
Or just watching something or listening to something and try and just focus on one thing instead of letting your mind wander.
Yeah.
Because if you focus on one thing, then it will just you won't realize it, but it just settles your mind. How they always say you should count sheep to get you go to sleep. If you just focus on counting those sheep, you'll eventually get tired because you're only thinking about the one thing.
Yep.
So your brain is resting.
Yeah. Let's just unpack that a little bit from a brain science perspective. Jay's comments about how teenagers may not look like they're depressed is an important one, because for an adult who becomes depressed, they tend to get really obvious in terms of the lowness of their mood and the negativity of their thoughts. So what happens is our moods as a human being will generally fluctuate anyway, from slightly high or slightly low, and we usually have a bit of a middle ground, and our moods will fluctuate. For an adult, when they become depressed, that fluctuation continues, but it's really obvious that they are at a much lower baseline and their moods are significantly lower, and it affects their energy levels and sleep and energy, and motivation and enjoyment and mood. Now, for an adolescent, what you find is that their fluctuations are a lot more extreme just normally. So normal adolescents' moods, now this has been documented many times before where they've asked adolescents to rate their moods. And adolescents who aren't depressed have moods that really fluctuate a lot through the day. And then when they're depressed, the same thing happens. So their moods will drop, but their fluctuations, or the degree of fluctuations, will continue. So there will be times where you won't see them as depressed, but the depths of their depression can sometimes be a lot worse than an adult. The other feature that we might need to remember is that an adult's primary symptom when they're depressed will be low mood, whereas sometimes for an adolescent, their primary symptom might be irritability. So they might be a bit more snappy, they might be less motivated, which means you need to ask them more, which means that you will find more conflict. So that in itself might be the primary symptom for an adolescent with depression. So it's important to remember that and keep an eye on that they might not look necessarily as depressed. And this comes out a lot because sometimes we'll say, well, they seem to be out playing with their friends, they can't be depressed. So it's important that doesn't necessarily mean the case. The next thing that Jay will discuss is about school, because it is very clear that school attendance drops when mental health difficulties are involved, and it's a real struggle for parents and teachers about how to support these kids who are not able to get to school or don't feel comfortable at school, and how to manage that. So these are things that we'd really like to continue our conversations over, and let's hear what Jay's got to say about how depression and anxiety might be impacting a young person and their schooling. What about school? The impact of depression or anxiety at school. From what you know and people you've spoken to. So, what do you think is the biggest impact on school if you're depressed or anxious?
Well, school. If you're anxious or depressed, you can have lack of motivation, like in school, like trying in classes or even going to school in general.
Yeah.
And like.
So you'd end up going to school less often, you reckon?
You'd be more absent from school.
Yeah.
Maybe like not caring that much about how you're doing, and just, I don't know, school becoming an anxiety thing, like you're anxious to go to school, and then with anxiety comes like avoidance, and then you sometimes wouldn't go to school for a while, and that can be damaging in your future.
And on that, are there kind of ideas you have about like what would the best way be for a school to approach a young person like that who's struggling to get there, or because of their emotions?
Well, if they are noticing a student's been away or acting differently, then I think they should just discreetly like check up on them, like send them an email or ask to chat, just like reassure them that they're not in trouble and everything. Just be gentle and kind, and like don't like take pity on them or anything. Just really show them that like this is like for everyone who's around a person with anxiety or depression. They should just be understanding and open, and then typically with school they can just say how they might be able to help in school, like
Yeah. And how would you, what about, what would be a school's approach to someone who hasn't been attending school, right, and who's finding it hard to come back to school? Like, what would you say, like in what you know and people you've spoken to, like, what are some of the things that would actually help a young person get back to school?
Well, it can be like hard to go straight back into a full 5 days a week school routine. So maybe just staggering it, taking it slowly, trying to get back into that routine, but not going like head on straight back into it. So maybe going in 1 or 2 days a week, or maybe going every day but only staying for like 2 classes. Just trying, and still like keep trying to keep up with work, but like keeping the teachers informed and stuff so that they can assist you and understand, like, because if the weight is lifted on like some homework or something, that can reduce like anxiety about that homework.
Yeah. And finally, and this probably goes for both teachers and parents, but what are some things that you would suggest that that teenagers would find helpful in terms of an attitude that a parent or a teacher might hold about the young person who's depressed, or an approach that they might take? What are some ideas that come to your mind about that?
We'll just recognize that they're human, and everyone goes through times in their lives like that, like they're down or unmotivated, and just whatever views you have, like on a bigger scale, like you have to go to school or something like that, just think about the person individually and how you can help them to get back to that thing. Like, never, it's not going to help if you're forcing anyone to do anything, or if you're like getting angry at them. Just really showing them that you understand, that you're on their side and you're trying to help them instead of like going against them.
Yeah, because I guess what you're saying is that you're a young person who's struggling, and then if your parents are getting frustrated at you, then that can really impact how you feel even more.
Especially like because your parents are your safe people.
Yeah.
Like, you'd want them to be able to comfort you. You can go back to them.
Yeah.
So just try not to. It's easy to like ruin a relationship that way, and like trust is a big thing.
Yeah.
Trust that your child's not lying or anything, and just believe and understand.
So I hope that you found Jay's insights helpful. I want to disclose that this interview wasn't scripted at all. I'm really, really grateful for Jay for giving her insights and giving her time. And she is really motivated to try and help other young people with their experience of depression and anxiety, and to spread that message that you're not alone, and that your parents can understand you and support you. And hopefully this video has helped a little bit to help parents to know what are some of the things that they can do with the attitudes that they can hold to build that trust. Like what Jay said, that trust is really important. So thanks for your time again today, and we'll see you next time.